Sacramento State off to the MAC. You know, why not, right?
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all, especially my everydayers, for helping make that the case. Trinidad Chambliss is back. Is that a bad thing for college football on the whole? I'll discuss with Steven Willis of Locked On Ole Miss. And the transfer portal just never stops. North Carolina brings in a quarterback. Why? We shall explore on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at Mazda. They put that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. There's more to a Mazda because there is more to you. So Sacramento State is ponying up $18 million to join the MAC. Sac State and Maction. I mean, I'll tune in on a Tuesday and Wednesday and see how it's going. This is not the same type of home run move that North Dakota State to the Mountain West was. I've got a few red flags going up. Not that this is automatically going to spell disaster. You look at what Kennesaw State did this past year, winning Conference USA in their, I believe, second year at the FBS level, and Sam Houston has popped up every now and then, but has also had some lows since joining Conference USA. It's been a mixed bag. When you make a jump from the FCS to the FBS ranks, there's always a question of, are you going to regret this? Because you're not going to win in the same way that you did before. Now, for North Dakota State, it made way more sense because they'd won 10 national championships. There was nothing left to really accomplish or prove other than, keep sustaining the best dynasty in the history of FCS football. That's a worthwhile endeavor. It's just a lot more natural to want to make that jump forward. Now, Sacramento State is not lacking for quality wins or a sustained run of success. They have been a good FCS program over the last several years. When Troy Taylor was there before getting the Stanford job, and then Sacramento State turned around and actually beat Stanford one year, they were good. They won a couple Big Sky championships. Hey, that's nothing to write off or disregard. They have not had anywhere near the level of success as a member of the Big Sky that North Dakota State has had. Not even close, quite frankly. I mean, most programs would not be close. But Sacramento State has been knocking on this door for a while. And I think there was an element, the similarity between them and North Dakota State is the sense of urgency. You can call it desperation if you'd like. Certainly anyone should be able to recognize there was an urgency to, hey, we got to get this done right now. There is an opportunity, there is movement, realignment's happening every single year, and now they've got a chance to go and be a part of the cool kids table. They no longer want to be thought of as playing second level football. They've expressed this desire many times. They kicked the tires on trying to get into the Pac-12. They wanted to be a part of the Mountain West, and now the Mid-American Conference is taking them. So Here's the semi-ridiculous part of this. North Dakota State geographically makes enough sense in the Mountain West footprint. We have far more ridiculous conference affiliations than that. Sacramento State is the first program out west to make the FCS to FBS jump this century. Last time it happened was kind of middle end-ish of the 20th century with a couple other schools in California, Fresno and San Diego State. Sacramento State's going to play in a league that has the following programs. For those of you that are not sufficiently dialed in to Maction: Western Michigan, Ohio, Toledo, Miami of Ohio, Central Michigan, Akron, Buffalo, Kent State, Ball State, Eastern Michigan, Bowling Green, and UMass. That's the MAC. Coast to coast. You got California, Massachusetts in the same conference. I guess from that standpoint, you're just trying to be like everybody else. I mean, the ACC and the Big Ten, they go coast to coast. So why shouldn't the MAC, right? This is a backfill move for the MAC because they lost Northern Illinois as a football playing member to the Mountain West. So from the MAC standpoint, it does make some sense to say, hey, we have to, add a school if we're going to keep our numbers up. This school's obviously very committed to playing FBS football. And oh, by the way, they're going to pay us to do it. Yeah, it's hard to turn down a paycheck of around $15 million to add a team to the league. There's nothing but upside for sure. Again, similar to North Dakota State. There's no major downside for the MAC other than for football games. You're now going to play contests in Sacramento. You get access to a new television time zone. I guess that's kind of fun, exciting, has some intriguing upside and whatnot. But on the whole, I don't know if you're a fan of the teams in this conference that you're going to love it. It's interesting. It's intriguing. I don't have the same hopes of Sacramento State winning the MAC and putting themselves potentially into the college football playoff discussion as I do for North Dakota State. I think that's far less likely. Brennan Marion was the head coach there. Interesting carousel point to note here on the coaching realm. In the coaching realm is the proper grammatical usage of a word there. Anyway, Brennan Marion went to Sacramento State and was the head coach. He came from UNLV as the offense coordinator. UNLV was thinking about, do we go to the Pac-12? Do we go to the Pac-12? Are we going to get into the Big 12? No, okay, we're sitting in the Mountain West. Brennan Marion went to Sacramento State, and according to reports, one of the reasons he left to be Colorado's offensive coordinator, one of the best hires of the offseason, by the way, was because he got sold on the vision of Sacramento State making the jump up to FBS football, and they were told no. And now they have figured out a way to get that no into a yes or into a sure, we'll take you. And that's all that they've really done, is the MAC has said, sure, we'll take you. The MAC is nowhere near as strong in football as the Mountain West is, sure. It provides me enjoyment and quality viewing material during the season on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday night, as it does for many of you. Is this a groundbreaking move that has playoff implications? No. Is Sacramento State going to be one of the favorites in the Mountain West this year? In the MAC this year? No. Whereas North Dakota State in the Mountain West, it would shock me far less if the Bison went through and won the Mountain West than it would if Sacramento State were to jump up and win the MAC. There are some sneaky, solid programs in there. Good coaches have been coming out of the MAC and going into the league for quite a long time. So I think what Sacramento State has managed to do, even though they're a program that has good recent tradition, more than a historic legacy at the FCS level, and good fan support, but nothing like what the Bison bring to the table. If you were to put these two candidates out there, and they really were for a period of time, if you were to put them both out there and the Mountain West were to say, we want to take this team instead of that team, you're taking North Dakota State 10 times out of 10. You are. But if you're the MAC, sure, if you want to pay us to come in, fine, we need a team. we need a team since NIU's playing football in the Mountain West. So I think that's a first. I think it's the first time I've ever led my show with the Mid-American Conference here. But you know what? We all love and need a little bit of action in our lives. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. Hit me up on Twitter. However you want to get in touch. Is Trinidad Chambliss a bad indicator for where college football is at? First, this episode brought to you by Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open when the pressure's on and you need the right hire. This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. They help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for with things like skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping that the right candidate stumbles across your post. Here's a stat that really says it all. In the time I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Less time searching, more time interviewing candidates that can help. That's what you should be looking for. That is what Indeed sponsored jobs gets you. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. You need to hire. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Back like he never left or had any question as to whether he was going to be allowed to return. Trinidad Chambliss will indeed be in Oxford. Steven Willis of Locked On Ole Miss is here on the show once again. Steven, I imagine when this decision came down without the NCAA's lawyers even in the courtroom, mind you, there was a bit of excitement in Oxford. What was your reaction?
Well, it's amazing because one decision by the judge and Ole Miss is legitimately a national championship contender for 2026. They're going to be one of the most talented, one of the favorites in the Southeastern Conference, and it all stemmed from getting Trinidad Chambliss back. It's like I told you over this whole thing, this was going to be the likely outcome, but it wasn't going to be because it was a shade tree local state judge. It wasn't going to be any of that. It was going to be legitimately bad faith and the NCAA picking and choosing arguments to deny him the waiver to start with that got them in trouble. And honestly, that's the reason you have the ability to take this to the state court whenever you present the facts like that. The NCAA presented no evidence, had called no witnesses, and left before the verdict was read. They had no intention of winning this case. This was all about eyeballs for Congress and getting Trinidad Chambliss, using him to get them.
How exactly does that work for the NCAA? Because it sounds like this whole situation is benefiting them somehow, and the image there. Expand on that.
The NCAA is about 10 years away from essentially dying. There's always going to be college sports.
Oh, I don't even know if it's 10 years, man.
Yeah, it's there. They need Congress desperately to help out and give them power. They need them to legislate power to the NCAA so that they can centralize and make their decisions law again like it was 20 years ago. They use Trinidad Chambliss because he is probably the most popular player that has ever gone through one of these type situations. It didn't matter if the NCAA won or lost the case. It mattered that they can point to it and say, hey, we need your help, Congress, because we cannot function on our own because everybody is going to state courts and all of this stuff of honestly the NCAA is on doing.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes some sense. Now, I want to just preface this for the Ole Miss fans out there by saying I'm not coming on here as a hater of the Rebels. I love watching Trinidad Chambliss play football, but as host of this show, I am obligated to ask the tough questions, Steven. That is why they pay me the biggest of bucks to host this particular show. Is an outcome like this, where Chambliss is going into now his 6th season of college football, bad for the sport?
No. I think there's a common misconception on this Trinidad Chambliss case that has gone around nationally. And hey, good for anybody that is wanting that to get out there. But this is a medical hardship case, the same thing that has been done for 50 years in the NCAA. Before the NCAA started handing out 8th and 9th years like candy, you had the rare 6th year senior because of something happening medically. The NCAA admitted in court that Trinidad Chambliss, if he was at Ferris State, it would have been a rubber stamp for him to get the medical hardship to keep going for a 6th year. The whole problem was the fact that D2 and D1 have different standards and the bureaucracy kind of got in the way. This honestly was, like I said, the perfect example of why the court avenue is useful. Because if you look at the letter of the law, what's going on, he would have been eligible in D2. He wouldn't have been eligible in D1. And the question becomes why? That is what this is for.
It's a good answer. What about, let me just throw this out there again, because I've discussed this before, and I think there is some real validity to it. The NCAA has suggested that guys getting extra years of eligibility and getting approved for 6th, 7th, 8th. There's a 9th year guy at Montana going into this year, and that was based on medical red shirts. By the way, Cam McCormick was at Oregon forever, then Miami. I think he had 8 or 9 years of college football in there. The point that gets made by the NCAA, which I don't think always makes the best arguments, is you're robbing younger classes, younger players, college athletes of the opportunity to play when they would otherwise see the field. I think the idea of a blanket 5 years of eligibility for everybody, regardless of injuries, I know there's a downside to it, but I also can't sit here and say there's not a downside or that it's not a negative thing for the sport that guys can play 7th, 8th, and 9th years, and then they're 24, 25 years old going against an 18-year-old kid. Like, I don't think that's a great thing for the sport either. Would you be in support of that notion of putting out just 5 years of eligibility for everyone? And regardless of injuries, yep, you might have to learn a tough life lesson in there somewhere along the way. But I think there's a win-lose in both of those outcomes. Because right now we've got the old guys playing all the time and getting this eligibility. And then in the other scenario, you'd have, well, a guy lost, a potential opportunity to play because of an injury. What do you think about that idea?
If it was 5 years and it was equitable, just spread across everybody in college football, I would have no problem with it whatsoever. 5 years to play 5, do that. Yes, 100%. The problem is, Spencer, with the NCAA, they don't really do equitable. They treat Michigan and Ohio State and Alabama, those guys differently than they treat Arkansas and Ole Miss and Northwestern. That's the way they have been for 50 years. You have the old Jerry Tarkanian joke that Kentucky basketball ticked the NCAA off so much that they put Cleveland State on 3 years more probation. So you have to put in guardrails to where it is truly equitable, or it's just going to become hey, we're playing favorites and playing brands and things like that. But at its root, I have no problem with 5 to play 5 and no waivers for any reason whatsoever. But I just don't think that it will ever get to that point. It's kind of like the playoff. They thrive on the drama. So they want you talking about the 9th year senior at Montana or the recent 8th year senior at Miami, and then still getting upset over Trinidad Chambliss trying to go and get a 4th year of competition, a 6th year of eligibility at the same time. They talk literally out of the same side, both sides of their mouth. And that's probably worse for college sports than the actual aspect of giving these players the fact that they choose bits and pieces to pull from to prove their point of whatever's going on. It's like I always talk about the NCAA. That's about as far as they see. They can't see out here. They only look right at the front of their nose, and that is because they're always constantly trying to put out the next fire, and they have no idea what it's going to look like 10 years down the road.
I don't know that anybody does, quite frankly. And I see the appeal and also the inherent downside if Congress were to get involved and then grant them an antitrust exemption so that they could operate as a governing body as the other sports leagues do at the professional level. But then you can open up a whole other can of worms in that regard, because then, well, do we have to just treat these kids like employees? Are we still paying for them to go to school? What exactly does that all entail? I don't know. I don't think there's a good solution anyway. Like, if you continue with the way it currently is, well, we see the downsides that we've got. If you go down a different path, because we haven't seen and no one's driven down that road before, we don't know what kind of treacherous obstacles are going to be there, right? I think it's kind of a lose-lose for college sports, and we're all just sitting here hoping that it works out somehow.
Well, you're sitting here hoping that it works out somehow for your team. The outrage that I saw after the Trinidad Chambliss verdict is almost 100% by teams that are playing against Trinidad Chambliss next season. It's funny how that works out. So everything is becoming much more tribal, much less interested in the good of the sport, more and more interested in the good of this specific team that you care about.
Well, notably, college sports have never been tribal before, so that would be a brand new phenomenon in this wonderful web that we've got. Steven Willis, Locked On Ole Miss, great as always. North Carolina. Look, listen to this. It's the middle of February, and you're not going to believe what I'm about to say because they added a transfer. The portal never sleeps. First, this episode brought to you by Mazda. This is Mazda's moving the game forward for those who show there's more to the score than what is on the screen. And we're going off field and into the courtroom with Trinidad Chambliss. Down at Ole Miss, he and his team put in the extra work to put the Rebels right back into the national championship conversation going into next year. They put in every single bit of work required to get him eligible, and they were successful. And these sorts of moments remind us of what it really takes to raise the bar. It's the extra work off the field and sometimes in the courtroom, dialing in every detail, giving it that extra fire, that grit, and that I never quit mentality. Mazda puts that same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel. What it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there is more to you. This episode also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Have you ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here is how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience, it's all there. And on a nightly basis, if you think you know how the NBA is playing out, FanDuel gives you a chance to put your knowledge to the test. You will love all the different features and all the different sports that you can bet on this time of year. So, if you haven't already, check out FanDuel at FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. It is indeed that real. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. What is Bill Belichick doing? Making a transfer portal move, apparently. Remember, folks, the portal is always available to be exited. You just can only enter in that small little window. And a quarterback, of all things, has committed to North Carolina in the middle of February. Look, it's Isaac Shade of Locked On Tar Heels, who is here to discuss Taron Dickens, the greatest crossover name in the history of cinema and media, if you think about it, because Taron Egerton is great and Charles Dickens is famous. So we got the best of both worlds there. But what does North Carolina actually have? Why are they bringing in a quarterback for new offensive coordinator Bobby Petrino?
Great question. I'd love to know the answer to that, Spencer. Look, this is now the third transfer portal quarterback to come into North Carolina, following Billy Edwards from Wisconsin, following Miles O'Neal from Texas A&M, who Bobby Petrino, by the way, recruited to Texas A&M. They've got a Torrey Newkirk still on the roster. They've got this uber talented freshman Travis Burgess coming in, or he's already there now, early enrollee, coming off an injury. And I was like, cool, you got your quarterback room. One of those two transfers is going to be the dude. If Burgess is healthy and ready, maybe he takes over midseason or in 2027. But now you've got a third transfer portal quarterback to contend with. And I thought we were done bringing up FCS quarterbacks who are undersized in North Carolina after the burning in flames failed experiment of the Gio Lopez experience.
Hey, Gio Lopez came from South Alabama.
He did.
Was he FCS before South Alabama?
No, he wasn't. So you know what? Fine, FBS.
I gotta throw respect for the Jaguars. I have a friend. Yeah, I got a friend who works in the athletic department, so the respect on the name must be retained.
Apologies to all the Jags
for the Sun Belt. Yeah, they're
Sun Belt. Yep.
Yeah, they're Sun Belt. So Yeah, the Gio Lopez thing didn't go very well.
No.
I have to say, I've dogged on North Carolina and Bill Belichick from the get-go, from the moment it was even rumored he was going to be hired as the head coach. They were my number one favorite under bet from a year ago. That cashed, by the way. My under bet's a lot better than my in-season bets from a season ago. So do you think this is just, sure, let's give a guy a chance? He's in the state or an adjourning state, not actually sure which Carolina, because we've got North Carolina and South Carolina as actual states, but West Carolina, I actually don't know off the top of my head which Carolina that's in.
It is in North. It's in
okay.
Kalohi, I think is how you pronounce it. It's near Asheville, basically, is where Western Carolina is. And
that's when you know it's in a big city, when you got to say it's near a different city and say it's basically that city.
That's exactly right. So we're like very close to like East Tennessee here is where we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think it is somebody who could, from a talent standpoint, somebody who could legitimately come in and battle for QB1 along with Edwards and O'Neal. Last year only played 9 of the 12 games for Western Carolina, and yet still passed for 3,500 yards, still threw 38 touchdowns and just 2 interceptions, 74% completion rate. But he's 5'11", he's 180, and so there's like that. Clearly the numbers and the talent are there. Was one of like basically considered one of the best quarterbacks at the FCS level last year, but can he go to the ACC out of that? I don't know. When you've got these other 2 guys coming in from the Big Ten and the SEC who have done it at those locations. Obviously for Carolina, they're coming off a back-to-back years of quarterback carousel after the Drake May and Sam Howell eras, right? And so it's like they're trying to find who it's going to be. Spencer, what I struggle with is it's like at some level, I like to have a bunch of bodies in the room and who rises to the top. But also, does that muddy it and make it more difficult than just like, here's our guy or here's our 2 guys, let them battle it out? I've been having trouble weighing that throughout Sunday as I've thought more about this this commitment. You know what it
reminds me of? Have you ever eaten Thai food at like a real authentic Thai restaurant?
Yeah.
Okay, when you order something, what does the waiter always ask you?
I don't know. Chopsticks or fork?
No. That's sushi. No, at the ones that I've been to, you always get asked, what spice level would you like? 1 or 5? And I here's how I'm going to apply this to what North Carolina's done in the quarterback room. 1 is no spice. And look, if you want to go in and have no spice, that's fine, but you're really missing out, and you got to have at least a little. 2, 3 is like the money range. 4 is, boy, you're pushing the limit. And 5 is you're bordering on a man versus food spice challenge from days of the past. That's what I feel like North Carolina's done here. They didn't bring in nobody. They're not at a 1. But now you're pushing towards the 5 spice level here. You know, like it almost feels, hey, I wanted some spice. I wanted a little heat. But now we got all these guys, and I'm with you on the PTSD.
How do you get enough reps for everybody to make sure who's your dude? You know, like
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. If I'm gonna put an optimistic spin on this, there are 2 names that come to mind. I'll give you the first one: Diego Pavia.
Yeah,
Diego Pavia was just in New York City. He felt like he should have won the Heisman Trophy. There are plenty that.
He did feel that way.
He did feel that way. Others did as well. It wasn't a ridiculous claim, but team success always plays a factor, whether you think that's right or not. It just does. So is that the comp for what him succeeding at North Carolina could look like?
It is. The funny thing is, Spencer, is there, it's funny that you mentioned Vandy. There were some academic concerns. Those are the reasons he missed those 3 of those 12 games last year, is he had gotten caught up in a little AI incident with and so had been suspended for the school. And so it's like, are there going to be issues getting into Carolina? Or actually, you know, it's one thing to commit. It's another thing to be like, yeah, I'm accepted and let's go. And so like, you know, I mean, it's February. This semester's already going. And so what, like, as we sit here talking right now, I don't know the particulars on, is there a way to get him in this semester, or is that ship well past sailed? Because I'm a professor and we're about to start week 6 of the semester here on Monday, right? Or is it like, great, you committed, we'll see for summer school, And so that's another issue, is just even eligibility of getting there and getting worked in.
Here's the other positive spin I can put on this edition. I don't remember the exact date, but one off season ago, around this time, on this very program, I discussed with another illustrious host at this network, one Steven Willis, the puzzling addition of a move that saw Ole Miss bring in a Division II quarterback transfer. What the heck are they doing? I mean, Ferris State is where? Who? Trinidad who? He's now in my rundown over there, as you can see in the background watching on YouTube. He's done a few things since then. So that was my other thought. My first one was why I thought you had to get. I mean, you brought in Billy Edwards. Let's not act like he's a shoo-in to be the best quarterback in the ACC or anywhere close to it. But my other thought was, those guys that are playing at a lower level, you can make the case FCS is above Division II, Isaac. So maybe Bobby Petrino, who's got a great track record with quarterbacks the last couple of years, maybe he knows what he's doing with this guy.
That's absolutely right. My immediate pushback is also that FBS and Gio Lopez is above FCS. So that logic falls apart for me. But dude, spot on with Bobby Petrino. I am excited, very excited about the possibility. And quite frankly, any step forward for North Carolina's offense, shouts to our Mazda moving the game forward moment. Any step forward for the North Carolina offense is a step from the ground level of the building, right? And so Bobby Petrino is going to have opportunities to see these guys. I trust his eyeballs. I trust his ball knowledge. I trust the brain trust of he and Bill Belichick together to know a thing or two about quarterbacks and to get figured out who is going to be the best out of these dudes, and let's figure it out and make it happen. And so, from that regard, let's roll the dice. Let's see what's going to happen.
Very quietly, this has become one of my favorite pending quarterback battles in the spring. Georgia Tech is near the top of that list. Maybe Syracuse, Steve Angeli, Malachi Nelson, maybe, amongst others. Those are just ones that I'll...
Maybe some random lacrosse player again. We'll find out.
We'll find out, won't we? Isaac Shade, Locked on Tar Heels. Great as always, my man. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.